Well, there hasn't been much activity in the CDM, to be honest, in Africa. But I think things are starting to tip, certainly in South Africa, where I think there are 17 or 18 registered projects. It looks like now there's a wake-up to the opportunities. A lot of those projects have been done in larger companies which have been able to bankroll them themselves off their balance books. But more and more the financial institutions are getting interested, which means other projects may well come online with smaller entities, and the entrepreneurs may well get more excited as well. It's necessary, I think, to exchange those experiences if there's going to be a real market here in Africa for carbon. The problems, of course, around Africa's own ability to generate carbon credits is what exactly this forum is all about. But of course, on the side, there's a lot of activity happening between different agencies and project developers and various other stakeholders, which is good for getting something going. Well, the nature of emissions in Africa are they're pretty small and disparate in the main. I mean, a lot of sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, doesn't have access to electricity, which tells you something about the level of development that's going on. But there are possibilities. I mean, one way of going might be to look at where the sectors are that are busy in Africa. And you can say very clearly that minerals beneficiation, agricultural processing, the power sector, maybe waste management are areas which are operational, and the financial institutions certainly know how to deal with agriculture and minerals. But how to get in there is going to be a bit of a challenge. My own sense is that there must be pretty well-trusted intermediaries that are looking at feasibilities for projects for these various corporates that are around doing these activities in agriculture and also in minerals and the power sector, of course. Because, of course, the financial institutions are not particularly well developed here in Africa, and dealing with things like derivatives, like carbon, is complex. And until there's a real show of the possibilities, a show and tell and exchange of funds, the financial institutions, which are very conservative, are not going to start moving locally. That's on the one side. The other side is looking at how to deal with the climate possibilities in addressing poverty, and this is where I'm very interested. There clearly is a suppressed demand for service, and as that service grows and as Africa develops, which it seems to be, it's increasing GDPs and so on, there's a possibility to avoid the lock-ins to dirty energy providers, like fossil fuels and so on, if we intervene early. And the way to intervene is to look at what is going to happen into the future. We have a chance to be able to predict what will happen if there is a lock-in, and that's your baseline. You can then say, well, if that's the level of service of your baseline and that's the emissions that come with it, how can you do a project claiming that satisfied level of service as your baseline and a project level? This is quite difficult to put together because it implies some predictive tools, and also the methodology panel is not particularly interested or keen to take on projects that are not measuring consumption. But until we get over that hump, we're going to have very small levels of emissions which are not going to be open to too much levels of efficiency or switching. It's not going to make sense in the carbon market. One last thing, if we do go along the predictive route in putting together baseline and project emissions for a future level of service, it means that the monitoring intensity is a good deal less, and therefore the transaction costs are lower.
And I know that you're about to rush off to speak on a panel on POA, so programmatic approaches. What are you going to reveal to the audience? Can we have a preview of what you're going to discuss in your panel?
Well, the panel is really about the different financial institutions and how to work with them to get what you want as a project developer or a program developer or coordinating entity or whatever. And I'm going to talk particularly about this issue of how to get projects and programs into Africa. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about the different types of financial institutions that are essential for certainly dealing with the lower income or the poverty. For me, it's very clear that we've got to start thinking about the CDM as a developmental instrument. And what I want to talk to are the possibilities of the microfinanciers, the retail microfinanciers as well as the bulk microfinanciers, and the development banks, particularly for public sector to work. And that's more or less what I'm going to talk to. Nothing rocket science-ish about it.